My daughter Emily just told her future in-laws that I'm too embarrassing to sit at the main wedding tables. Good thing she doesn't know I could buy their entire country club before breakfast. I'm standing in my kitchen at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, still in my work clothes from fixing Mrs. Taylor's garbage disposal. Emily thinks I'm asleep. She's on the phone with her fiancé's family, finalizing the seating chart for her wedding in 2 weeks. My dad's just a handyman who never made anything of himself, she says. We need to keep him away from the important guests. I take a slow sip of my coffee, set the cup down without a sound, and smile quietly. Little does she know I've been planning something very special for her big day. Let me back up 6 months. That's when Uncle Robert died and left me his entire estate, $2.8 million, a villa in Tuscany, 2 apartments in Manhattan. I haven't told anyone, not even Emily. Robert was my father's brother, the one who went to the Naval Academy and made a fortune in defense contracting. He never married, never had kids. The lawyer said he wanted his money to go to someone who understood the value of honest work. I was going to surprise Emily after her wedding, maybe help her and Ryan buy their first house, show her that her old man wasn't the failure she thought. But over the past 2 months, as wedding planning intensified, I started noticing things. The venue tours I wasn't invited to. The dress shopping trips where she told me she was going alone, to think. The vendor meetings scheduled during my work hours, as if she didn't want me there. Dad, maybe you should skip the cake tasting, she said 3 weeks ago. Ryan's parents are coming and you know how you get around fancy stuff. How I get around fancy stuff, like I'm some kind of embarrassment. I raised this girl by myself after Laura died 12 years ago. Worked 3 jobs to keep her in private school. Sold my motorcycle to pay for her college application fees. Ate peanut butter sandwiches for 6 months so she could go on that senior trip to Europe. But now she's 26, engaged to Ryan Harrington from Harrington Wealth Management, and suddenly her handyman father doesn't fit the image she's trying to project. Last week she brought Ryan over for dinner. I made my famous lasagna, the one she used to beg for every birthday, and set the table with Laura's good china. Ryan walked through my front door in his $5,000 suit, looked around my living room, and I watched his face change, not disgust, more like pity. Mr. Bennett, he said, shaking my hand with that limp grip rich kids learn at private school. Emily has told me so much about you. But during dinner, when I mentioned the new kitchen I was installing for the Thompsons, Emily kicked him under the table. When I showed him the antique cabinet I'd restored for Mrs. Davis, she quickly changed the subject to their honeymoon plans. Dad's very practical, she said, like practical was a disease. After they left, I found a text she'd accidentally sent to me instead of Ryan, sorry about tonight. I know it's not what you're used to. Once we're married, we won't have to do this often. We won't have to do this often. The woman I raised, the daughter I sacrificed everything for, planning to cut me out of her new life like I'm some shameful secret. I've been watching it get worse every week. The wedding invitations went out without my input on the guest list. She hired a wedding coordinator, Claire Mitchell, but told her to handle communications directly with the bride because her father was too busy with work. Too busy, right? I found out about the engagement party from Facebook. Emily posted pictures of herself and Ryan at some fancy restaurant with his family. The caption read, "Celebrating with the future in-laws. So grateful for all their support and guidance." Not a word about me, like I didn't exist. Then there was the dress shopping incident. Ryan's mother, Susan Harrington, took her to that boutique in Manhattan. They spent $8,000 on a Vera Wang dress. I only found out because the credit card company called to verify a large purchase. "Oh, that," Emily said when I asked about it. Susan insisted on paying. She said it was important that I look appropriate for their family. Appropriate for their family. But what about ours? I started paying attention to the wedding expenses. Venue at Grandview Country Club, $45,000. Catering for 150 guests, $32,000. Photography, $12,000. Flowers, $15,000. How are you affording all this? I asked her last month. Emily got that uncomfortable look she always gets when we talk about money. Ryan's family is helping, and I've been saving. Saving on her $35,000 marketing coordinator salary while paying $1,800 a month rent on a one-bedroom in Stamford. The math didn't add up, but every time I tried to discuss it, she changed the subject or left the room. Then, 2 weeks ago, I offered to contribute. Told her I had some money set aside from a big job. Maybe I could help with the rehearsal dinner. "Dad, no," she said quickly. "You don't need to worry about that. Ryan's family has it covered." The way she said it, like the idea of me contributing was embarrassing. Like my money wasn't good enough for her fancy wedding. That's when I started realizing this wasn't just about money. This was about her being ashamed of who I am, of where she came from. The final straw was last Sunday. I was at Home Depot buying materials for a bathroom renovation when I ran into Susan Harrington. She was there with her interior designer picking out fixtures for their guesthouse renovation. "Oh, Mr. Bennett," she said, like she was surprised to see me in my natural habitat. "How lovely to run into you. Emily mentioned you work in construction." "I'm a handyman," I said. "I fix things that are broken." She smiled, that polite smile rich people use when they're looking down at you. "How nice. Such honest work. Ryan's father always says we need more people willing to work with their hands." Work with their hands, like I'm some kind of noble savage. "We're so excited about the wedding," she continued. "Emily is such a bright girl. We're really looking forward to welcoming her into our family." Notice she didn't say anything about welcoming me. That night, I sat in Laura's favorite chair and thought about the daughter we'd raised. The little girl who used to bring me coffee in my workshop and ask to help with projects, who used to brag to her friends that her daddy could fix anything. Now she wants to hide me at the back tables of her wedding like I'm some kind of embarrassment. But you know what? Maybe it's time she learned exactly who she's been embarrassed of. The conversation that changed everything happened last Tuesday night. I was in my kitchen, just finished fixing the Henderson's leaky pipe, when I heard Emily on the phone upstairs. She thought I was asleep. It was past 11 and I had an early job the next morning, but I'd come down for a glass of water when I heard her voice drifting from her old bedroom window. She'd come over to pick up some things for her apartment. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but when I heard my name, I stopped walking. "No, Susan, I totally understand your concerns," Emily was saying. "Trust me, I've been thinking about the same thing." I knew that voice, that careful, polished tone she uses when she's trying to impress someone, the voice she learned in college, the one that doesn't sound anything like the daughter I raised. "The thing is," she continued, "my dad's he's a handyman who never made anything of himself. I love him, obviously, but he doesn't really fit in with your crowd." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I know, she said, and I could hear her moving around the room. "Ryan keeps saying family is family, but let's be realistic here. Can you imagine him trying to make small talk with Judge Whittaker or the Carlsons? He'd probably show up in his work boots." There was a pause while Susan responded. "Exactly," Emily said. "That's why I was thinking we could put him at table 12 in the back corner with Mrs. Taylor and some of the other neighbors. People more, more on his level." His level. Like I'm some kind of subspecies. "The thing is, Susan, I've worked so hard to build a different life for myself. The MBA, the marketing job, meeting Ryan. I can't let my father's situation undermine everything I've accomplished." I gripped the water glass tighter. "I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a good man. He raised me after Mom died, worked multiple jobs, all that. But he never pushed himself to be more, never tried to better himself or think bigger. He's content fixing toilets and changing light bulbs. Content, like ambition, is only measured in dollar signs and college degrees. The last thing I want is for him to embarrass himself or us in front of your friends and family. These are important people, Susan. Federal judges, hedge fund managers, the Carlsons. I can't have my dad talking about pipe repairs during cocktail hour." Another pause. "Trust me, I've thought about this a lot. Maybe we tell him there was a problem with the seating and we had to make some last-minute changes. He won't question it. He doesn't really understand how these things work anyway. How these things work, meaning social events where people like me aren't welcome. And honestly, Susan, I think it would be better for everyone if we just managed his involvement overall. Maybe he gives a short toast at the rehearsal dinner, something small and private, and then we keep him more in the background during the actual reception." I set the glass down on the counter, careful not to make a sound. "I know it sounds harsh," Emily continued. "But you have to understand, my whole life I felt held back by where I come from. I finally have a chance to be part of something bigger, something better. I can't let my father's limitations drag me down now." My limitations. The man who put her through private school, who worked overtime to pay for her college, who sold his motorcycle to cover her graduation trip. The other thing is I don't want him getting the wrong idea about our financial situation. He still thinks I'm struggling. If he sees how much we're spending on this wedding, he'll start asking questions I don't want to answer. Questions like how a marketing coordinator making $35,000 a year could afford a $45,000 venue. Right. Exactly. It's better if he just thinks Ryan's family is being generous, which you are, obviously, but I don't need him feeling like he should contribute or anything. His idea of helping would probably be offering to fix the country club's plumbing." She laughed. Actually laughed at the idea of her father wanting to help with her wedding. "I just want one day, Susan. One perfect day where I don't have to worry about explaining my background or making excuses for my family situation. Is that too much to ask? Apparently, I was a family situation that needed explaining. Oh, and one more thing, Emily said. I haven't told him about the engagement party next week, the small one at your house. I figure it's better to keep that intimate. You know, just immediate family and close friends. He wouldn't really know anyone anyway, and her voice trailed off, but I could fill in the blanks, and he might embarrass us in front of the people who matter. Perfect, she said finally. I knew you'd understand. You've been so amazing through all this, Susan. I feel like I'm gaining a mother, not just a mother-in-law. Someone who actually gets what I'm trying to achieve. Someone who gets what she's trying to achieve, unlike her actual parent. Okay, I should go, Emily said. I'm meeting Ryan for drinks at that new place in Greenwich, the one with the jazz trio. His friend Bradley recommended it. Bradley? Another trust fund kid who's never had a callus in his life. Love you too, she said. See you tomorrow for the dress fitting. And Susan, thank you for understanding about my dad. It means everything to me. I heard the window close and her footsteps on the stairs. I stood in my kitchen holding that empty water glass, listening to her gather her things and leave through the front door. She was meeting Ryan for drinks at a jazz club in Greenwich, where they'd probably talk about their wedding plans, their honeymoon in Italy, their bright future together, a future that apparently didn't include much room for the man who made it all possible. I walked back to the sink, rinsed out the glass, and set it on the counter. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. Emily wanted to keep me at the appropriate distance, wanted to manage my involvement, wanted one perfect day without the embarrassment of her working-class father. I could give her that. I could give her exactly what she was asking for, but first, I was going to give her exactly what she deserved. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my workshop holding Uncle Robert's will. The lawyer had given me a copy 6 months ago, 23 pages of legal language that boiled down to this: Robert left his entire estate to his nephew, James Bennett, in recognition of his dedication to honest work and family values. Honest work, family values. Robert would have laughed if he could hear what I just heard. The estate breakdown was simple. The villa in Tuscany, $1.2 million. The apartment at 785 Park Avenue, $800,000. The second apartment on the Upper East Side, $800,000. Plus another $150,000 in various investments and savings. Total, $2.8 million. More money than Emily could spend in a lifetime. More money than the Harrington family had probably inherited from 3 generations of wealth management. And she was embarrassed of me. I thought about Uncle Robert. We weren't close growing up. He was 15 years older than my dad, always off at military academies and then overseas. But when he retired and came back to Connecticut, we started having lunch once a month. He'd tell stories about managing construction projects for military bases in Germany and Japan. I'd tell him about the houses I was renovating in town. He respected what I did. Called me the last honest man in Connecticut. You know what I like about you, James, he said during our final lunch just 2 weeks before his heart attack. You never pretended to be something you weren't. You didn't need to prove yourself to anyone. You just did good work and raised a good daughter. A good daughter, right? I looked at the property photos the lawyer had given me. The Tuscan villa was a 12th century stone house that Robert had restored over 20 years, infinity pool, 15 acres, olive groves, the kind of place rich people pay thousands a night to vacation at. The Manhattan apartments were pre-war classics, high ceilings, original hardwood, Central Park views, the kind of real estate that appreciates faster than most people's salaries. Robert had been planning to tell me about the inheritance in person. I wanted to see your face when you realized. You'd never have to fix another toilet unless you wanted to, his letter said. But if you're reading this, I guess I ran out of time. He'd run out of time, but I hadn't. I walked back into the kitchen and made coffee. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I had to be at the Morrison job by 7 o'clock. Their kitchen renovation was behind schedule, but I needed to think this through. Emily wanted a wedding where she didn't have to explain her background, where she could pretend she came from money, from class, from the kind of family the Harringtons would approve of. What if I gave her exactly that? I pulled out my phone and looked up the Grandview Country Club's website. Annual membership, $85,000. Initiation fee, $50,000. The kind of place where federal judges and hedge fund managers played golf on weekends. The kind of place I could buy outright with what Uncle Robert left me. I thought about the wedding expenses Emily had mentioned: $45,000 for the venue, $32,000 for catering, $12,000 for photography, $15,000 for flowers. Total about $125,000. Roughly what I made in 3 years of handyman work, but only 4% of what Robert had left me. What if Emily's dream wedding, the one she was too embarrassed to ask her father to help pay for, was funded entirely by her father. What if the man she wanted to hide at table 12 in the back corner was secretly the reason she could afford to impress the Harrington family at all? I opened my laptop and started researching anonymous donations, gift policies, wedding vendor payment structures. Turns out people make anonymous contributions to weddings all the time: distant relatives who want to help but don't want recognition, family friends who prefer to stay in the background, wealthy benefactors who value privacy. The wedding coordinator, Claire Mitchell, would handle all the vendor payments anyway. If someone wanted to contribute anonymously, they'd just need to coordinate with her directly. Someone like a wealthy uncle or a successful businessman or a private investor who wanted to help a young couple get started in life. Someone who definitely wasn't a handyman from Westchester County. I spent the next hour drafting an email to Claire Mitchell, professional, businesslike, the kind of communication Ryan's family would send. Dear Ms. Mitchell, I am writing to inquire about making an anonymous contribution to the Bennett Harrington wedding on June 15th. For personal reasons I prefer to remain unidentified, but I would like to assist with the outstanding vendor payments for this event. Please confirm the total amount needed and provide wire transfer instructions for payment. I understand discretion is essential in these matters and trust you will handle this contribution appropriately. Regards, a family friend. I read it 3 times, added my phone number, deleted it, added a different number, the Google Voice line I used for business calls. The beautiful thing about being a handyman is that you learn how systems work: electrical, plumbing, structural. You learn that everything connects to everything else. And if you understand the connections, you can make things work the way you want them to. Weddings were just another system. Vendors needed payment. Coordinators needed instructions. Families needed to maintain appearances. All I had to do was connect the right wires. I sent the email at 4:30 in the morning. By 5 o'clock, Claire Mitchell had responded with the outstanding balance and payment instructions: professional, discreet, no questions asked. By 6 o'clock, I'd transferred $45,000 from Robert's estate account to the Grandview Country Club, payment in full for Emily's dream venue. By 7 o'clock, I was at the Morrison job site, installing cabinet hardware like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Emily wanted to keep me at an appropriate distance. Perfect. She'd get the most distant father imaginable, a father so distant she wouldn't even know he was there until the moment she needed to. The first call came at 9:15 that morning. I was under the Morrison's kitchen sink replacing the garbage disposal when my business phone rang. Is this the anonymous contributor for the Bennett Harrington wedding? Claire Mitchell sounded excited. Speaking, I said, using the slightly formal tone I'd used in the email. This is incredible, she said. We've been trying to secure the Grandview Country Club for 8 months. They had a last-minute cancellation, but the deposit requirement was immediate. When I called this morning to confirm your payment went through, they offered us the premium package, the one with the garden ceremony space and the upgraded reception hall. The premium package, $45,000 instead of $30,000, but it includes the ocean view terrace, the upgraded lighting, and exclusive access to the wine cellar. The bride is going to be thrilled. I smiled, tightening a pipe coupling. That's wonderful to hear. If I may ask, what's your relationship to the family? Emily mentioned her father is helping with the rehearsal dinner, but she didn't mention any other family contributors. I prefer to remain private, I said. Let's just say I have an interest in seeing this young couple start their marriage. Well, of course, absolutely. Should I mention to Emily that someone has taken care of the venue? Just tell her the club had a payment error sorted out. Nothing more specific than that. Understood. And sir, the catering balance is $32,000. If you're interested in, send me the details, I said. I'll review them. I hung up and finished the disposal installation. The Morrison's kitchen was coming together nicely: quartz countertops, custom cabinets, high-end appliances, the kind of renovation that takes 6 months to plan and 3 weeks to execute, the kind of work Emily thought wasn't real work. My phone rang again at noon. Emily calling from her office. Dad, you're never going to believe this, she said, and for the first time in months, she sounded genuinely excited to talk to me. The country club called this morning. They said there was some kind of payment mix-up, but it's all sorted out now, and we got upgraded to the premium package. That's great, honey, I said, pulling the old disposal out of the Morrison sink. What kind of upgrade? The Ocean View Terrace, Dad. It's the most beautiful ceremony space they have. We're talking floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Long Island Sound. Ryan's parents are going to die. Ryan's parents. Not Ryan and Emily. His parents. The wedding coordinator thinks it might have been some kind of computer error, Emily continued. She said sometimes the club's billing system gets confused with last-minute cancellations, but who cares? We got the space we wanted. Sounds like everything's working out, I said. It really is. Oh, and Dad, I know we talked about you maybe helping with the rehearsal dinner, but honestly, don't worry about it. Ryan's uncle offered to host it at his house in Greenwich. You know how these family situations can get complicated. Complicated, right? That's fine, Emily. Whatever makes you happy. Thanks for understanding. I know this whole wedding thing has been crazy, but it's just so important to Ryan's family that everything goes perfectly. Everything goes perfectly for Ryan's family. Got it. After she hung up, I called Claire Mitchell back. The catering balance, I said, $32,000? Yes, sir. That's for premium service for 150 guests, past hors d'oeuvres, 4-course seated dinner, open bar, late-night dessert station. It's really quite an impressive menu. Send me the invoice. I'll take care of it today. Sir, that's incredibly generous. Should I coordinate with the bride about? Same as before, anonymous. Just tell her the vendor payment went through. By 2 o'clock, I transferred another $32,000 to the caterer. By 3 o'clock, Claire called to tell me about the photography upgrade, $12,000 for the premium package, including engagement session, wedding day coverage, and a custom photo album. Done, I said. By 4, it was the florist, $15,000 for upgraded arrangements, white peonies and garden roses instead of the standard package. Done. By 5 o'clock, I'd paid for Emily's entire dream wedding, $125,000 transferred from Uncle Robert's estate account in 6 hours. My daughter was getting married in 2 weeks, and she didn't even know her father was paying for it. I finished the Morrison job and drove home, thinking about the conversation I'd overheard the night before, Emily's voice explaining to Susan Harrington how her father's limitations were holding her back. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily, "Dad, the most amazing thing happened. All our wedding vendors got paid somehow. Claire thinks there was some kind of benefactor or something. Can you believe it?" I could believe it. Another text, Ryan's mom thinks maybe his grandfather contributed anonymously. He's always doing stuff like that for family. Either way, we're so lucky. Lucky. That was one word for it. I parked in my driveway and sat in the truck for a moment, looking at my house, 3-bedroom colonial built in 1987. Laura and I bought it when Emily was 2. We were so proud. First-time homeowners, 30-year mortgage, big dreams about the family we'd raise here. Laura never got to see Emily graduate high school, let alone plan a wedding. But she would have loved seeing our daughter so happy. She also would have been heartbroken to hear how Emily talked about her father. I walked inside and opened Uncle Robert's portfolio. Even after today's transfers, I still had $2.7 million in assets, the villa, the apartments, the investments. More than enough to buy Grandview Country Club outright. More than enough to make the Harrington family look middle class by comparison. And Emily had no idea. My phone rang. Claire Mitchell again. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you," she said. "In 20 years of coordinating weddings, I've never had someone step up like this for a young couple. Emily is absolutely glowing. This is going to be the wedding of her dreams." "That's all I wanted," I said. "There is one more thing. The bride mentioned wanting to upgrade to Dom Perignon for the champagne toast. It's another $3,000, but given your generosity, add it to the bill," I said. "Thank you. And sir, I hope you'll be there to see how perfect everything turns out. This wedding is going to be magical." I hung up and walked out to my workshop. Laura's picture was still on the workbench, the one of her holding baby Emily at the hospital, both of them looking at me like I was the most important person in the world. Emily wanted a perfect wedding with no embarrassing family complications. I was going to give her exactly that. And in 2 weeks, during my father of the bride speech, I was going to show her exactly what kind of family she'd been so embarrassed of. 3 days later, Susan Harrington called me directly. I was at the Hendersons installing new kitchen cabinets when my phone rang. "Mr. Bennett, this is Susan Harrington, Ryan's mother. Do you have a moment to chat?" I balanced the phone against my shoulder while marking measurements on a cabinet door. "Sure, Mrs. Harrington. What can I do for you?" "Please call me Susan. I was hoping we could meet for coffee this afternoon. There are a few wedding details I'd like to discuss with you privately." Wedding details she wanted to discuss privately. This should be interesting. "I'm working until 5, I said, "but I could meet you after that." "Perfect. Do you know the Starbucks on Greenwich Avenue? The one near the Ralph Lauren store?" Of course she picked the Starbucks in the most expensive shopping district in Connecticut. "I'll find it," I said. At 5:30, I walked into the Greenwich Starbucks still wearing my work clothes, Carhartt coveralls, Red Wing boots, tool belt around my waist. Susan was already there, sitting at a corner table with a skinny latte, checking her phone. She looked up when I approached, and I caught that split-second expression rich people make when they remember who they're dealing with, like smelling something unpleasant and trying to hide it. "James," she said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you so much for meeting me." "No problem. What did you want to discuss?" She waited until I'd gotten my coffee, black, no nonsense, before starting her speech. "First, let me say how grateful we are that Emily is joining our family," she began. "She's such a bright, accomplished young woman. Ryan adores her." I nodded, waiting for the but. "The thing is, James, weddings can be complicated events. Lots of moving parts, lots of different social dynamics. I've been coordinating events like this for 30 years, and I've learned that successful celebrations require careful planning." "Makes sense," I said. "Now, I want you to know that we absolutely want you to feel included and comfortable at the reception. You're Emily's father, after all. But I was hoping we could discuss some logistics to make sure everyone has the best possible experience. Here it comes. I've arranged for you to sit at table 12, she continued, pulling out a printed seating chart. "It's actually one of my favorite tables. Lovely view of the garden, very peaceful. You'll be with some of Emily's neighbors and a few family friends, people you'll have lots in common with. Table 12 in the back corner, exactly where Emily had wanted to put me." "I see," I said. "And I was thinking for your toast during dinner, maybe we could keep it brief, 3 or 4 minutes at most. Just something simple about being proud of Emily and welcoming Ryan to the family. Nothing too detailed about her childhood or family history. You understand? Nothing too detailed about her childhood or family history. Can't have the wealthy guests learning that the bride grew up in a regular house with a working father. I want to be sensitive to your situation, Susan," she continued. "I know this world can feel intimidating, the country club, the formal setting, all these business associates and family friends. It's perfectly natural to feel out of place. My situation, like being working class, was a medical condition." "Mrs. Harrington," I said, setting down my coffee cup. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. What kind of work does your husband do?" She looked surprised by the question. "Richard manages a hedge fund, Harrington Capital. He's been in finance for 25 years. And he's never had to fix anything with his hands. Never had to solve a problem that couldn't be handled with a phone call or a checkbook." Her smile got tighter. "Well, that's what we have people for, James. Contractors, repair services, that sort of thing, right? People like me." "Yes, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need people who work with their hands. Ryan always says America was built by hardworking people like you. Hardworking people like me, as if I was some kind of historical curiosity. The thing is, Susan," I said, "I'm not intimidated by your world. I just don't think it's as impressive as you do." Her smile disappeared entirely. "I've been in a lot of fancy houses," I continued. "Fixed a lot of expensive things for a lot of wealthy people. And you know what I've learned? Rich people's toilets break exactly the same way as everyone else's." She stared at me for a moment. "James, I'm trying to help you here. I'm trying to make this easier for everyone." "I appreciate that," I said, standing up. "And here's how you can help. Don't worry about managing me. Don't worry about what I'll say or how I'll act. Just worry about throwing a nice party for your son and my daughter. But James, I'll see you at the wedding, Susan. Table 12, right? Lovely view of the garden." I walked out, leaving her sitting there with her seating chart and her management strategies. On the drive home, I thought about what Emily had said on that phone call, how she wanted one day without having to explain her background or make excuses for her family situation. Well, she was going to get it. By the time I was done with my speech, there wouldn't be any explaining necessary. The social media campaign started the next morning. Emily posted a photo on Instagram, her and Ryan at the country club, both of them glowing, with the caption, "2 weeks out and everything is falling into place. So grateful for our families and the amazing people helping us create our dream day #wedding 2025 #blessed #dreamcometrue. Grateful for our families, plural." Interesting choice of words considering she tried to hide one half of that equation. I scrolled through the comments. Lots of heart emojis from her college friends. Congratulations from coworkers and several comments from people I didn't recognize. Susan told me about the amazing anonymous benefactor. So romantic. Your wedding is going to be goals. Can't wait to see the photos. Ryan's family is so generous. You're lucky to marry into such a successful family. Anonymous benefactor. Successful family. No mention of the bride's side contributing anything. That afternoon, Emily called me while I was at the Davis job refinishing their hardwood floors. "Dad, I need to ask you something," she said. "Have you been talking to anyone about the wedding?" I paused the floor sander. What do you mean? Claire mentioned that someone's been asking questions about our vendor payments. Ryan's mom thinks it might be a reporter or something. You know how people get curious about big weddings in Greenwich. A reporter, right? I haven't talked to any reporters, honey. Good, because Susan thinks maybe there's some gossipy neighbor or whatever trying to figure out our business. She's worried about privacy. Privacy from the woman who'd posted 12 Instagram stories about wedding planning in the past week. The other thing is, Emily continued, I've been getting some weird comments on social media. People asking about my family, wanting to know about my background. Susan thinks maybe I should make my accounts private until after the wedding. Probably not a bad idea, I said. I just don't want anything to mess this up, you know. Everything's been going so perfectly, the venue, the vendors, all the payments somehow working out. It feels almost too good to be true. Almost too good to be true. If only she knew. That evening, Claire Mitchell called my anonymous benefactor line. Sir, I hope you don't mind me reaching out, she said. But I wanted to give you a heads up about something. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong exactly, but the bride's future mother-in-law has been asking questions about the anonymous payments. She seems concerned about where the money came from. Concerned. Susan Harrington was worried that her son was marrying into a family that might have dirty money because clearly honest working people couldn't possibly afford a $125,000 wedding. What kind of questions? She wants to make sure everything is legitimate, tax implications, that sort of thing. I told her anonymous contributions are completely normal, but she's insisting on some kind of verification. Verification. She wants me to provide documentation that the funds came from a legitimate source, bank records, tax documents. She says it's for the family's protection. I almost laughed. Susan Harrington wanted to investigate the source of the money that was paying for her son's wedding, the money that was making her family look generous and successful. Tell Mrs. Harrington that all funds came through proper banking channels, I said. If she needs additional verification, she can contact her family attorney. Should I mention that you're willing to provide documentation? Tell her that any questions about the source of funds should be directed to the benefactor's legal representation. Do you have legal representation? I thought about the estate attorney handling Uncle Robert's will. Edwards, Patterson, and Associates, I said. They'll handle any inquiries. It wasn't technically a lie. Robert's estate did have legal representation, and they would handle inquiries. They just didn't know they were representing an anonymous wedding benefactor. The next morning, Emily posted another Instagram story, a screenshot of a Connecticut magazine article titled Greenwich Wedding Season, the most anticipated celebrations of 2025. Her wedding was featured in the slideshow with a photo of the Grandview Country Club and the caption, "The Bennett Harrington celebration promises to be one of the season's most elegant affairs." Most elegant affairs, funded entirely by the father she was too embarrassed to seat at the main tables. I screenshot the article and saved it to my phone. Evidence for later. That afternoon, Susan called Claire with an ultimatum: either the anonymous benefactor provided legal verification of fund sources or the Harrington family would cover the remaining wedding expenses themselves. Claire called me immediately. "Sir, I'm in an impossible position here," she said. "The mother of the groom is essentially questioning your integrity." "And what did you tell her?" I told her that in 20 years of coordinating weddings, I've never had to investigate a client's benefactor. That anonymous contributions are protected by privacy laws and industry standards. Good. But she's threatening to pay all the vendors directly if we can't provide documentation. She says she won't have her family's reputation associated with questionable financing. Questionable financing, the woman who thought her husband's hedge fund money was cleaner than inheritance from a military contractor. "Let me handle this," I said. I hung up and called Edwards, Patterson, and Associates directly. "This is James Bennett," I told the receptionist. "I need to speak with someone about providing documentation for estate disbursements." 20 minutes later, I had everything I needed: official letterhead confirming that funds dispersed from the Robert Bennett estate were legitimate inheritance proceeds, fully documented and tax compliant. I emailed the documentation to Claire with instructions to forward it to Susan Harrington. Within an hour, Claire called back. "She's satisfied," she said. "Apparently military estate proceeds meet her standards for legitimate wealth." Military estate proceeds. If Susan only knew that her son's wedding was being funded by the embarrassing handyman she'd tried to manage at a coffee shop. But she'd find out soon enough. In 1 week, at the reception she was so worried about protecting, I was going to show her exactly where that anonymous benefactor money had come from. 1 week before the wedding, I spent the evening in my workshop organizing everything. Spread across Laura's old craft table were 6 months of evidence: bank statements, property deeds, vendor receipts, recorded conversations, the complete financial record of how a worthless handyman had secretly funded his daughter's dream wedding. I started with Uncle Robert's will, 23 pages establishing the inheritance of $2.8 million in real estate and investments to James Bennett, dated 6 months ago, filed with probate court, completely legitimate. Next to it, the property valuations: Tuscan villa at Via dei Colli $1.2 million, Manhattan apartment at 785, Park Avenue $800,000, second apartment on the Upper East Side $800,000, total $2.8 million, more money than Emily had ever imagined her father possessing. Then the wedding expenses: $45,000 to Grandview Country Club for the premium venue package, $32,000 to Elegant Affairs Catering for premium service, $15,000 to Garden State Florals for upgraded arrangements, $12,000 to Timeless Moments Photography for complete coverage, $3,000 for Dom Perignon Champagne upgrade, total $125,000 paid anonymously by Emily's embarrassing father. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the recorded conversations, 47 minutes of audio from that night 2 weeks ago when Emily explained to Susan why her father needed to be managed and marginalized. My dad's just a handyman who never made anything of himself. He doesn't really fit in with your crowd? I can't let my father's situation undermine everything I've accomplished. He's content fixing toilets and changing light bulbs. I don't want him getting the wrong idea about our financial situation, every insult preserved in digital clarity. Every moment of shame and dismissal documented for posterity. I opened my laptop and created a presentation. Slide 1, Uncle Robert's will. Slide 2, property photos and valuations. Slide 3, anonymous payment receipts with dates and amounts. Slide 4, Emily's recorded quotes about her father's limitations. The moral accounting was devastating. While Emily was telling her future family that her father was a failure who'd never made anything of himself, that same father was secretly paying for her entire wedding. My phone buzzed. Text from Emily: Dad, tomorrow's the rehearsal dinner. Are you excited? Can't believe my wedding is in 6 days. Excited. I was excited. All right. I walked to the file cabinet and pulled out the documentation Claire had provided about the wedding guest list: 150 people, federal judges, hedge fund managers, real estate developers, pharmaceutical executives, the kind of people Susan Harrington worried would be contaminated by association with working-class families. All of them coming to witness Emily marry Ryan. All of them unaware that the bride's unsuccessful father was worth more than most of them combined. I printed copies of everything: the inheritance documents, the property valuations, the payment receipts, the recorded conversation transcripts, enough evidence to fill a briefcase. Then I called Father Daniel Connor. He'd known Laura and me since before Emily was born, baptized her, confirmed her, counseled us through Laura's cancer. He was officiating the ceremony as a favor to our family. James, he said when he answered, how are you holding up? Big week ahead. Daniel, I need to ask you something. As the officiant, do you introduce the father of the bride speech? Usually, yes. Right after dinner, before the dancing starts. Is there something specific you want me to say? Just the standard introduction. But Daniel, this speech is going to be educational. Educational how? I looked at the evidence spread across the table. Let's just say some people are going to learn things they didn't know about Emily's family. James, you're not planning to embarrass your daughter at her wedding, are you? No, Daniel. I'm planning to educate her. There's a difference. We'll find out Saturday night. Friday morning, I made copies of the key documents and sealed them in envelopes: one for Emily, one for Ryan, one for Susan and Richard Harrington, one for Claire Mitchell. Evidence packages ready for distribution after my speech. I also printed a large format version of the payment receipts, something visible to the entire reception hall when I held it up during the toast. Friday afternoon, I went to the bank and withdrew the remaining balance from Uncle Robert's estate account, not all of it, that would be suspicious, just enough to make a point, $50,000 in cash, hundreds and fifties, the way working people get paid for big jobs, the way Susan Harrington probably thought all my money came from. I put the cash in a manila envelope and wrote Emily's college fund on the outside, money I'd actually saved over 8 years to help her with graduate school, money she'd never asked about because she assumed I didn't have any. Saturday morning, the day of the wedding, I called Claire Mitchell one final time. This is the anonymous benefactor, I said. Sir, is everything ready for tonight? The vendors are all set up. Everything looks absolutely perfect. I'm sure it does. Claire, I want to thank you for your discretion throughout this process. Of course, it's been my pleasure. Will you be attending the reception? I smiled, looking at the evidence packages lined up on my kitchen counter. Oh, yes. I'll definitely be there. Wonderful. I hope you'll be pleased with how everything turned out. I think everyone's going to be very pleased with how everything turns out. After I hung up, I laid out my clothes for the evening: navy suit, the one I'd worn to Laura's funeral, white shirt, blue tie, the kind of outfit Susan Harrington had probably worried I didn't own. In 6 hours, Emily would walk down the aisle to marry Ryan Harrington. In 7 hours, they'd be husband and wife. In 8 hours, I'd stand up to give my father of the bride speech, and in 8.5 hours everyone at that reception would know exactly who had paid for their elegant evening: the handyman who never made anything of himself. The Grandview Country Club looked perfect. I had to admit, Claire Mitchell knew what she was doing. White peonies and garden roses everywhere, exactly as Emily had dreamed. String quartet playing Pachelbel's canon as guests found their seats. Golden hour sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Long Island Sound. $125,000 well spent. I stood at the back of the garden ceremony space, watching Emily walk down the aisle on my arm. She looked beautiful in her Vera Wang dress, the one Susan had insisted on buying, $8,000 of silk and lace paid for by Ryan's family's generosity, or so everyone thought. "Thank you for this, Dad," Emily whispered as we walked. "Thank you for understanding how important today is to me." Understanding, right? I handed her over to Ryan at the altar. Father Daniel smiled at both families as the ceremony began. The Harringtons filled the first 3 rows on the groom's side: federal judges, pharmaceutical executives, real estate developers, Susan's carefully curated guest list of important people. On the bride's side, Mrs. Taylor from next door, a few of Emily's college friends, some cousins I hadn't seen in years, the people Emily categorized as more on my level. During the vows, I watched Susan Harrington dab her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, so moved by her son's wedding to this bright young woman from a humble background, so pleased that their anonymous benefactor had made the day possible. If only she knew. The cocktail hour was everything Emily had wanted: Dom Perignon champagne, the $3,000 upgrade I'd approved, past hors d'oeuvres from the premium catering package, the jazz trio Ryan's friend Bradley had recommended. I circulated among the guests with my plastic name tag: James Bennett, father of the bride. People smiled politely when introduced, made small talk about the weather and the beautiful venue, then found excuses to drift toward more important conversations. "You must be so proud," Judge Whitaker told me during cocktails. "Emily seems like a lovely girl, very accomplished." "She is," I said. "She's achieved exactly what she set out to achieve." At 7:30, Claire Mitchell announced dinner service. The guests found their assigned tables according to Susan's carefully planned seating chart. Table 1, Ryan's family and their closest friends. Table 2, Emily's college roommates and their husbands. Tables 3 through 11, business associates, family, friends, people who mattered. Table 12, me, Mrs. Taylor, the mailman from my neighborhood, and Emily's high school math teacher, the appropriate company for someone of my social standing. I sat down and watched the dinner service, 4 courses exactly as advertised: lobster bisque, mixed greens with pear and gorgonzola, filet mignon with truffle butter, chocolate soufflé with raspberry coulis, $32,000 worth of food and service funded by the man Susan Harrington had tried to manage with coffee shop condescension. During the main course, Emily stopped by table 12. "Dad, is everything okay? You seem quiet tonight." "Everything's perfect, honey. Exactly like you planned. The venue is amazing, right? And the food is incredible. Ryan's family really went all out." "Ryan's family, still keeping that story straight. It's very generous of them," I said. "I'm just so grateful everything worked out. The anonymous benefactor, the upgraded packages, all of it. Sometimes I think the universe just wants good things to happen." The universe, that was one way to put it. At 9 o'clock, Father Daniel stood up with the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. It's time for some toasts to our happy couple. First, we'll hear from the father of the bride, James Bennett." Polite applause. I stood up, walked to the front of the reception hall, and took the microphone. Behind me, the AV screen displayed a slideshow of Emily and Ryan's engagement photos. I looked out at 150 faces. Susan Harrington smiled encouragingly from table 1. Emily beamed at me from the head table. Ryan raised his champagne glass in anticipation. "Thank you, Father Daniel," I began. "And thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate Emily and Ryan's wedding." More applause. I waited for it to die down. "You know, people have been asking me all evening how proud I must be of my daughter, and I am proud. Emily has accomplished exactly what she set out to accomplish." I paused, looking at Emily. She was glowing, probably thinking about how well-behaved her embarrassing father was being. Emily has worked very hard to build the life she wanted, the job, the connections, the social standing. She's been very strategic about the image she wants to project. A few murmurs from the audience. Susan Harrington's smile looked a little strained. In fact, Emily has been so focused on her image that she's become quite concerned about things that might undermine it, things like her background, her family, her father. The room went quiet. Emily's face started to change. Susan Harrington put down her champagne glass. 2 weeks ago, I overheard a phone conversation Emily had with her future mother-in-law. She was explaining why her father, that's me, needed to be kept away from the important guests tonight. Emily's face went white. Susan Harrington's eyes widened. She said, and I quote, "My dad's just a handyman who never made anything of himself. He doesn't really fit in with your crowd." Gasps from several tables. Ryan looked confused. Emily started to stand up. She was concerned that I might embarrass myself or her by talking about pipe repairs during cocktail hour. She wanted to make sure I was seated appropriately with people more on my level. I gestured toward table 12. Mrs. Taylor waved nervously. Emily also said she didn't want me getting the wrong idea about their financial situation. She was worried I might ask embarrassing questions about how a marketing coordinator making $35,000 a year could afford a wedding like this. "Dad, stop," Emily said, her voice barely audible. "But here's the thing, Emily. I already knew exactly how you could afford a wedding like this." I reached into my jacket and pulled out the first document, Uncle Robert's will. 6 months ago, my Uncle Robert passed away and left me his entire estate, $2.8 million in real estate and investments. The room erupted in murmurs. Richard Harrington leaned forward, suddenly interested. The estate includes a 12th-century villa in Tuscany valued at $1.2 million and 2 apartments in Manhattan worth $800,000 each. I held up the property photos, facing them toward the audience. But I haven't told anyone about this inheritance, not even my daughter. I was saving it as a surprise for after her wedding, a gift to help her and Ryan start their new life. Emily was staring at me in shock. Ryan's mouth was hanging open. Then I heard that phone conversation. I heard my daughter explain to her future family how embarrassed she was of her father, how she needed to manage his involvement to protect her image. I pulled out the payment receipts. So I decided to give Emily exactly what she wanted, a wedding where she didn't have to worry about her father's limitations. The AV screen behind me switched to a new slide, bank transfer confirmations. I became an anonymous benefactor. I paid $45,000 for this venue upgrade, $32,000 for the catering, $15,000 for the flowers, $12,000 for the photography, $3,000 for the Dom Perignon upgrade. People were pulling out their phones, taking pictures of the receipts I was holding up. Total, $125,000 paid anonymously by Emily's embarrassing handyman father who never made anything of himself. The room was dead silent except for camera clicks. So Emily, you got exactly what you asked for, a perfect wedding with no family embarrassment. Your father was so distant and uninvolved that you didn't even know he was there. I looked at Susan Harrington, who was staring at me like I was a ghost. Mrs. Harrington, you were concerned about the source of the anonymous wedding funds. Well, now you know. They came from the man you tried to manage at a coffee shop last week. The man you worried might embarrass your family by talking about his work. Susan's face was bright red. Judge Whitaker, Mr. Carlson, all of you distinguished guests, you've been enjoying an evening paid for entirely by a working-class handyman who inherited more money than most of you will see in your lifetimes. I walked closer to the head table where Emily was crying. Emily, I want you to remember this moment. Remember how it feels to realize that the father you were ashamed of, the man you wanted to hide from your new family, is the reason you could afford to impress them in the first place. Dad, please, she whispered. The villa in Tuscany, that was going to be your honeymoon gift. The Manhattan apartments, I was planning to give you one as a wedding present. But I guess I need to reconsider what kind of daughter deserves that level of generosity. I handed the microphone back to Father Daniel, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Enjoy the rest of your reception, everyone. It's already paid for. I walked toward the exit, leaving behind 150 stunned wedding guests and a bride who finally understood exactly who her father really was. Behind me, I could hear phones buzzing, cameras clicking, and the sound of 100 conversations starting at once. Emily's perfect wedding was about to become the most talked-about event of the Greenwich social season, for all the wrong reasons. 3 days later, I was sitting on the terrace of Uncle Robert's Tuscan villa, drinking coffee and reading the Connecticut Post online. Greenwich wedding shocker, bride's anonymous benefactor revealed as arranged father ran on page 1 of the style section, complete with photos from the reception and quotes from unnamed guests about the most dramatic wedding toast in Greenwich history. My phone had been ringing nonstop since Saturday night. Emily had called 47 times. I'd answered none of them. Ryan had called twice. Susan Harrington had called once. Claire Mitchell had called to ask if I needed help with damage control. There was no damage to control. Everything had gone exactly according to plan. The social media aftermath was spectacular. #Greenwich Wedding Drama was trending on Instagram. Someone had recorded my entire speech on their phone and posted it on TikTok, where it had 3 million views and counting. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. This dad is a legend. Ungrateful daughter got what she deserved. Never underestimate working-class parents. Emily's Instagram account had gone private, but not before someone screenshotted her posts about being blessed and grateful for family. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. My phone rang again. Emily, of course. This time, I answered. Dad, please, she said immediately. We need to talk. Do we? I'm flying to Italy. I'm coming to find you. We can't leave things like this. Emily, I'm not hiding from you. I'm just living somewhere that appreciates the value of honest work and family loyalty. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything. About me? About what matters? About being embarrassed of your father? Silence. Emily, do you remember when your mother was sick? When you were 14 and she was doing chemo? Of course. I worked 3 jobs to keep you in private school and pay for her treatments. I sold my motorcycle to cover her medication costs. I missed sleep, missed meals, missed everything that mattered to me except you and her. I remember. And you know what your mother said to me the week before she died? She said she was proud that you'd never have to be ashamed of your family. Emily was crying now. I guess she was wrong about that. Dad, please let me fix this. Let me make it right. Emily, the money's still there. The properties, the inheritance, all of it. When you figure out how to be proud of where you come from instead of ashamed of it, we'll talk about your future. What does that mean? It means I'm not your emergency fund anymore. I'm not your anonymous benefactor. If you want a relationship with your father, you'll have to decide if you want a relationship with your father. I hung up and poured another cup of coffee. The Tuscan hills stretched out below the villa, olive groves and cypress trees as far as I could see. Uncle Robert had been right. It was a beautiful place to appreciate the value of honest work and family loyalty, the 2 things I had always given my daughter, and the 2 things she had finally learned were worth more than any country club membership in the world.